Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Welcome to the Islamic Vice podcast. I'm your host Majid, and today I have with me my co-hosts, Brother Rash, Brother JK, and Brother Afi. Assalamu alaikum, brothers, and welcome to the show.
Wa alaikum assalam wa barakatuh.
How are things going? Everything good?
Very good, thank you. Alhamdulillah, it's getting dark early, so I only just noticed.
Yeah, that's it, mate. That's it. It's that time of the year now. We see Brother Afi there, proper, coat and everything on. It's cold as well. He's wrapped up. Best way to be, man. Best way to be.
Good time of the year to, if you got some extra fasts to get in and stuff like that. Short days, easy to fast.
100%.
Yeah, well, I mean, as the wise people in the past said, winter's good because you can fast a lot, and also the night is longer to be praying throughout Qiyam and stuff throughout the night as well. So
Inshallah.
Inshallah ta'ala, let's hope we can take advantage of that, of this time of the year. But yeah, inshallah, let's start with today's topic, really, guys. And the topic, as you know, is to do with the Qatar World Cup, which is going to start tomorrow. Tomorrow, if we release this today, then it will be tomorrow. Otherwise, it would be on the day of the kickoff. I think it's Ecuador and Qatar, I think, first game. But obviously, we're not here to speak about the football as such. As you know, the Qatar World Cup has raised a lot of issues. Even though it's been about 12 years in the making, it seems like people were sleeping for the last 11 years and 10 months or so, and things are kind of kicked off in the last couple of months in regards to whether the World Cup should be happening in Qatar or not. I mean, we've seen the discussion recently where people like Harry Kane, and not just him, but other footballers who have said, they're hell-bent on wearing the rainbow armband. Even though it's strange, though, because Russia in 2018 World Cup, nobody was saying this. And actually, if you look at it from, apparently what they say is in Russia, there's a lot of discrimination against, gay people and LGBTQ and stuff like this. But coincidence, but I'm sure we're going to go into that. And also there's many people, on the TV, celebrities talking about how the World Cup should be boycotted, and, some people won't be going over, and ex-footballers and TV celebrities and so on. And I also heard this, there was a caller in one of these radio shows, and what he said was that he said they didn't give the World Cup to the Middle East, they gave it to the Middle Ages. So what you're seeing is a lot of stuff being talked about in regards to Qatar not being suitable, whether it's to do with, slavery, what they call slavery, i.e. a lot of people, migrant workers dying whilst building the stadiums and stuff. And I think it's more to do with the issues to do with Western culture, like, LGBTQ, whether people can wave the rainbow flag and this sort of stuff. So loads to get into. So Rash, I'll start with you, bro. What's your initial thoughts on what's going on?
I think one word describes it all, is like the hypocrisy of it all. So on one side, there's all of this kind of sports washing going on. And yeah, okay, people are looking forward to it, but there's a lot of discussion this time about, why it shouldn't be held there, like you've described, so I won't repeat that. But it's just ironic that when it happens in other places, be it the US or in Europe and stuff, all of these countries have issues in them politically, and they always highlight that, don't use sport to push a political agenda. Well, when they're pushing, LGBT and stuff, just because they think that that's their value system, that's still their political agenda against Muslims, isn't it? Whereas if Muslims turn around and go, okay, we're going to have a competition where these things are not allowed, fine. That might be our political agenda, but why be hypocritical about it? So that's kind of my main thing. And then I think, interestingly, a lot of people are coming out and saying different things, and you are finding some Muslims sharing it, and I don't blame them. So, for instance, that Infantino, when he said just in the last day or so, he's highlighting that, the West hasn't got a position that it can talk about the East's or the Middle East's morals, because they've got bad history in the last 3,000 years as well. So what I would say about that is, yes, that's a fair statement. He's right. But at the same time, he's only doing it to cover FIFA's tracks. So that's why I say it's all hypocrisy. I'm looking forward to it a little bit because I look forward to football. But at the same time, there's not that saying. There's so many ills linked to it. A Muslim country allowing alcohol, a Muslim country, allowing LGBT people wearing LGBT stuff, even though they don't want it, but still going to allow it, aren't they? They're not going to stop England or those teams from playing. So it leaves a bitter taste, even if you look forward to it. It leaves a bitter taste, and like I say, just a feeling of hypocrisy, really, more than anything else.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. JK, your thoughts, bro? You're on mute, bro. You're on mute.
Sorry, age-old mistake. Yeah, I agree with what Rash is saying. I think it does leave a bit of a bitter taste. I think just with the whole World Cup, like I said, in 2010, the bid was won. There's a lot of corruption involved in that. A lot of bribes taken by FIFA officials. And interestingly, why aren't they highlighting that? Why are they targeting Qatar? And actually, it isn't a target of Qatar. That'll be an incorrect, very shallow way of looking at it. It's actually a targeting of Islam and the values of Islam. Qatar is just the example they're using here. And as Rash said, they're actually conforming in many ways in this, although they won't go to the full extent, because whilst it's not a nation that implements Islam in any way at all, there's many Muslims that live there and they're considered a Muslim nation. So they will get a lot of pressure as well. And they did get a lot of pressure when it came to the alcohol stuff and the fact that they were going to allow it. Now they've half banned it because they'll allow those who have exec boxes to drink it. So it's interesting. Like if you've got money, then it's all halal. But if you don't, then it's haram for you. So I agree. There's a lot of hypocrisy. I think the main thing here is that there's an opportunity for the West really to push their liberal agenda against Muslims and target Islam and the values of Islam, claim that Islam is backwards for not allowing this. And actually it's born out of many lies as well. They claim that there's going to be the treatment of LGBTQ community will be highlighted as being something that, there's a lot of corruption and there's a harshness towards them. But the reality is, even Qatar are saying that's not the case. It's just the rule is that there can be no sort of affection in public. There can be no sort of promotion of zina, regardless of whether it's with the same sex. That's the Islamic position, right? So I think really this is an angle. This is an opportunity for the liberals to really push their agenda, try to show the backwardness of Islam, really take that position that they have the universal truth and the universal right to say that their values are the values that should be implemented everywhere. And that's not just with the World Cup. World Cup here is just an example, but they've been doing it for decades. And this is their agenda to have dominance across the world. So I think here they're going to be using it, and there's no surprises here. I think for Muslims, we need to really educate ourselves in terms of why the liberals are really pushing this and why they are targeting Islam than other, like you said, in Russia and stuff like that. They never mentioned it. Why now? These are the questions we should be asking, because there is a reason they're targeting Islam. And in previous podcasts you've spoken about it, Islam is the only deen, the way of life, that has stood firm to its values, whilst other ways of life, Christianity, other religions, have all basically they've all conformed and accepted. So Islam is that one standing in the way of their liberal values and their secularism. So they really want every opportunity they can find. They will try to kind of target Islam, diminish its values as being backwards, and claim that their values are true and more upright. But we should really highlight the hypocrisy, highlight the double standards in all of this, as Rash was saying.
Yeah, exactly. And to be honest with you, I remember when the in 2010 when, you know, Qatar won the bid. And my initial reaction at that time was that this was an experiment, because 1,000,000%, you know, that, you know, the World Cup isn't just about football. There's going to be things that are going to be brought into that country where in any normal situation, it would be impossible for those things to happen. But under the guise of having the World Cup, these things would be allowed, right?
Exactly.
Afi, what are you saying, my bro?
Yeah, I mean, what the brothers have said is spot on, innit? And we need to ask the question of why is it being done in this manner and why now? Because, you know, sporting events have been held in other Muslim countries where, you know, they're like for like, they're exactly the same. You know, what's the difference between the UAE and Qatar in the rules are implemented and the social system that the Muslims live by there? Absolutely none. But, you know, there's a Grand Prix happening there tomorrow, but you don't get this kind of uproar and outcry when it comes to that. The Singapore, I've got, from what I was reading today, Singapore, I've got an anti-homosexual law rule in Singapore, but you don't get this kind of outcry there. And, you know, the way the buildings are being built by immigrants is identical. Saudi Arabia, you know, we've seen the buildings are being built there, and the way workers, you know, are treated there. So there is a question in why Qatar now in this manner, and I think it cannot be separated from the response that we've seen from Muslims in the defense of Qatar. And I think just to put it on the record, you know, the Qatari establishment, the ruling family, the royal family, etc., you know, they're in the same, you know, they're from the same cloth as the rulers from all other Muslim countries. You know, they're exactly the same. So they're nothing special, or, you know, they haven't got the interests of Muslims at heart. And this is evident from their actions in recent years, right? You know, in 2003, CENTCOM moved from Saudi Arabia because the public opinion that they didn't want American bases in Saudi Arabia. And where did they move to? They moved to Qatar. You know, Qatar was part of the satanic coalition that bombed the hell out of Yemen. You know, this is only going back 5-6 years. So, you know, these guys are not angels, and they are not there for the interests of Muslims. So let's not be fooled by, you know, them having voodoo facilities in the stadiums and banning alcohol in certain areas, as these guys are now trying to defend and represent Islam in a good light because they've got certain people coming in and they're going to have dawah workshops. So, you know, I think Muslims have come out in defense of Qatar because they are trying to defend the attack on the Islamic rules, all right, which is good and it's noble, and we should. But let's not confuse it with actually defending. Let's not confuse defending Islam with defending the Qataris, because they're two completely different things, and they are not the same.
I'm glad you said that, Afi. Yeah, I think that's such an important point, especially with the discussion that we're having, because it's easy for someone to listen and go, if we talk anti-liberalism, anti-West, and the things that are happening, it may come across as if we're pro-Qatar and pro the way they've treated migrants, and pro the way they're, you know, just because they're banning alcohol in the stadium. So it's not about being on either side of the debate. It's actually about going, actually, these leaders don't represent Islam. And I would say also, where I'd slightly say something different, is that you're right, the leaders are generally cut from the same cloth, but I think some of the Arab leaders are even worse. They're enemies of Islam, whereby they're attacking Islam, whereas some of the other leaders, you could argue, they have just purely national interests. So in some instances, they may do things that are positive for Islam, whereas certainly the Arab leaders, your MBSs, your MBZs, and these guys from some of these UAE countries, yeah, they're outright, you know, they're enemies of Islam, because everything they're doing is part of these programs that are dreamt up by think tanks, sponsored in the Americas and the Western countries. In fact, even in the last few weeks, it's come out that a lot of the major donors for the think tanks in America, you know, your whether it's Bretton Woods and what's the other one beginning with B?
Brookings
Institute and stuff like that. Some of the stuff has come out that the amount of the investment and the amount of funding that goes into them is coming from some of these Arab countries. And you're thinking these Arab countries are putting millions, if not billions, into these foreign policy think tank reports, which are then helping generate foreign policy for the likes of America. There's something wrong there. So it's clearly against Islam and enemies of Islam. So, but I just wanted to just say that I think that point's really important. It's not about supporting Qatar, because what they've done in their history and what they're still doing doesn't support Islam. But equally, we have to expose the liberalism that is being promoted by these type of things.
Yeah, of course. And when we're talking about rulers, I mean, the reality is a question one should ask is that, knowing the culture of football, knowing, where it started and on what the culture is, whether it's, in the early 70s and 80s, even up until today, you got the hooliganism and the alcohol and all this sort of stuff. People should ask, that a World Cup event, is this something that's even suitable to be played in the Muslim lands? Because you cannot divorce the actual football with all the culture around it. So that's what I'm saying to you, that when it was announced in 2010, at that time I felt, and I was telling people, look, this is an experiment. The people who are bringing this in, okay, someone may argue they could be nationalistic and it was just to put Qatar on the map and et cetera, et cetera. But look, these people are not stupid. They know what challenges this is going to bring, right? It's going to, what kind of discussions this is going to start, whether it's to do with, gender or homosexuality, alcohol, all these things. So Rash, just give me 1 sec. So the point I'm saying is that 100% the people who decided to have this World Cup at Qatar, for them, it was a way of bringing stuff in, right, which is going to make a huge discussion amongst Muslims of what's our role? Are we backwards? Do we need to keep up with the times, etc. Now, the people, the few concessions that we're seeing now, and linking back to Afi's point and Rash, the point you made, is that I personally believe, my opinion is that a lot of this is driven by the fact that the normal person on the ground is thinking, yo, what's going on here, right? The Muslims on the ground are saying, this is unacceptable, right? Especially in a place like Qatar, where it's not a huge population and majority of the people probably are well off anyway. They don't really need that massive income boost, right? The normal people there. So for them, it's like, wait a minute, these things are not acceptable. So I think the few things that have been tweaked, and so late they've been tweaked, I think that's not because of the rulers all of a sudden thinking, actually, just the day before the World Cup starts, we're going to change this rule now that you can't have alcohol in the grounds, other than in certain areas. I think there's pressure, which goes back to the point that Afi's making, is that alhamdulillah, that this pressure is there from people, Muslims around the world and people on the ground. But if it was up to the rulers, I think that's a different issue.
100%.
Rash, bring in, bro. You want to make
it was just a quick one. I was just going to say that there's this inclusion element. So you have to step back a little bit and think of the fact that, the want for a population. Remember, social media is at play here as well. There's the youth there. Youth are into their social media. They're looking into sports, these massive football players or sports players. So there's a natural attachment to these sports. Then if you go, well, there's this world event that happens in various countries and your country is involved, and therefore nationalism gets pushed clearly. So World Cup's purely about nationalism. And then you've got people who, are then saying, well, these sports are for our lands, but okay, we'll bring them to your lands if you comply by certain standards. And again, these are their standards. Can you see this is actually like soft colonialism? This is like neo-colonialism. What they're doing is going, fine, you now want our sports in your lands, we'll bring them there, but you need to comply with certain standards. And then it brings these discussions in. And okay, thankfully, like you say, all people are not stupid. They'll go, wait there, you guys have a bad track records. Who are you to lecture us? But that still doesn't stop people becoming more integrated into these systems. And then what happens is, okay, a country could revolt and go, you know what? We'll take our club out, our country out of that tournament, and we won't support that. But then the populations are being indoctrinated by social media and Western media and all of these things. So it's difficult. If a country suddenly came out and said, we're not even going to enter the World Cup because it's linked to Western colonialism, then it's going to be like, oh no, but there might be a revolt, or there might be people in that country go, no, we want players to represent the country. So they've succeeded in that respect, in creating this kind of inclusive bubble that tries to attract even Muslim countries into it. And it's to the detriment of our values, because we're having to, even if we're not doing it directly, adopting those values, they're being fed to us and our children, and we have to then try and protect ourselves from it, which isn't always easy.
Yeah, exactly. And the reality is that the powers at the top, they want this stuff to happen in the Muslim lands. They want these raves to be happening in Jeddah and Riyadh and these type of Riyadh season and all this sort of stuff. They want this. But what we're seeing, you're not seeing those ideological super duper capitalists, those people, the real decision makers. You're not seeing them come out and kind of criticize this. Who are you seeing? You're seeing people who live in the West. So for them, they're saying, look, football is Western, and for example, there's a quote by Philip Lahm, he used to be the captain of Germany. He said, FIFA has damaged football and its credibility as a Western organization. So these people that are coming out and saying it can't be in Qatar because of X, Y, and Z, it's those people who, like you're saying, they believe that their way is the best way, and they're not going to compromise. Whilst those people at the top, they're willing to dangle a carrot, like, okay, Qatar, you can have this sporting event, and they don't mind that change being slow. But the normal numpty on the street, he wants, his acid test for the Qataris is, this might sound crude, but two guys, snogging outside the stadium and the Qatari police saying, well done, mate. You understand? That's their kind of acid test. They want that change straight away. It doesn't happen like that. It's a window of opportunity, but it's a long window to try to change people's ideas, the culture they carry. This is not something which happens overnight, right? But the people at the top, whether it's the Qatari government and in the West, they understand what's happening, and that's why you have people coming out on TikTok and all these people, like, they're blatantly saying, look, the problem that a lot of these people have, whether they're ex-footballers and is that it's a Muslim country and it's an Arab country. In reality, that is the problem. It's not to do with Qatar as such. It's to do with that it's in the Muslim lands. They've got a certain way of living. We see that as being backdated. We see that as being barbaric and X, Y, and Z. And for us, it's unacceptable for us to go there. And if we do go there, then we expect these changes. That's what let's say it as it is. The problem is with Islam, and it's with Arabs, it's with the Middle East, it's anything linked to the Islamic civilization.
Exactly, yeah. There's a sort of like global integration going on. So like we have integration in the West, isn't it? About foreigners coming to the Western lands. You need to integrate. You need to adopt the values of the British, the Western values. Here, there's an element of a global integration. They want other lands and other nations that are not in the West to integrate with their value system, their universal human rights. So that's what they want. And like you said, they're willing to play the waiting game, the super capitalists, those that know that this will take time. I think that's why I've been a bit wary of these arguments that we're hearing around tolerance. So I don't know whether you guys saw the Hugo Lloris argument, and a lot of Muslims praised him, right? And even though he what he's saying is better than like what Harry Kane and others were saying about, oh, we need to wear the armband and all. His argument was, look, when people come to France, when they come to France, we expect them to follow our values and adopt our values. So why should we go to their lands and not like disrespect their values? We should be respectful of their values as well. And this isn't. I get why it comes across. Oh, that sounds quite a bit more tolerant. It is more tolerant, actually, that view, and it's a bit more consistent. Actually, that's probably what the word is. A consistent view, whereas other people are being inconsistent. However, as Muslims, we should recognize that this isn't the view. This isn't the position that we take as Muslims, because that same position is what the position Macron takes. Actually, he says that to the Muslims in France, that this is your living in this land. These are the values. Why are you talking about Islamic separatism and all of this, right? This is the same view, that you're here, you need to adopt our values, our French liberté, whatever they call it. You need to adopt all of this. And if you don't, repercussions. So we need to really be careful, because that might be the stepping stone. Like you said, it will take time, right? One step might be this other view, that you have your way, we have our way. As long as we respect each other, that's fine. And respect is okay. But when it comes to views that go against Islam, we shouldn't be tolerant. We shouldn't be tolerant of those views, actually, because these are from man. These are of a creature that is way below the creator, who knows how we should live and has given us a criteria of right and wrong. So why should we be tolerant for these? We shouldn't. And we shouldn't take this view. Otherwise, it will come to this level of we respect you and you respect us. And by that, that's the first step. And then it goes further in terms of, actually, as long as, you're not infringing the rights of me, do what you want. And, slowly, the whole world becomes this very free, free world of liberty and all of that, right? So I think it's really, we need to be careful of some of these arguments, especially I've seen a lot of Muslims promote it. I did this topic in khutbah yesterday, and I was, the brothers that were there obviously were all against this, right? We're all against LGBTQ. No Muslim in their right mind will say this is right. But how many of us can really explain why we don't adopt this? Is it just because, Allah said so? Which is true. That is the position. However, it's really important we understand why there's this clash between liberalism and Islam. The fact is, liberalism comes from the word liberty, to be free, right? So whatever they do, whatever they say, whatever they think, however they act, is from that basis of freedom and liberty. So you will have these perversions in society, whether that is being gay, whether that is feeling like a woman when you're a man, you're a man, or the opposite, or even worse. We've seen worse, where you feel like a dog one day, and that's how you, whatever you feel like you can do. Your world's your oyster, as they say. Whereas that's liberty, that's liberalism, that's liberty, that's complete freedom, right? Whereas Islam, as we know, is not that. Islam is submission, right? We submit to Allah, we submit to the commands of Allah, we submit to the prohibitions of Allah. We are Abdullah, we are Amatullah, we're slaves of Allah. So we don't have this freedom or liberty. This is not part of our value system. We know we were created. We know there is a criteria of halal and haram. Regardless of our whims and desires, we will follow that. And Allah even says in the Quran, there are those who have made their gods their whims and their desires. And this is it. You don't need to be on any other religion. Even if you're of no religion, you still have a God. And that God is your whims and your desires. Whereas as Muslims, we are servants and slaves of Allah. We hear and obey. Sami'na wa ata'na. That's the difference. And this clash that we see is very pronounced when it comes to Islam and liberalism. And it's not pronounced when it comes to other religions. Yes, other religions may be a bit against it, but we've seen Christian priests who are gay. They've adopted it. They've accepted it. Whereas Islam is the only one true force that stands in the way. And that's probably one of the reasons like Andrew Tate and others were attracted to Islam, because of this position that Islam takes. So I think it's really important. The reason I'm mentioning is I think it's really important we understand the backdrop of all of this. It's not just the World Cup. Everyone saw that video, or I'm sure you guys saw the video yesterday or the day before in that school where they brought in a gay Muslim, and the students, mashallah, the pupils, they stood their ground. They challenged the teacher, they challenged the guest. And these are the children we want. We want to make sure our children know when something is being said of Islam that is wrong, and it's a lie against Islam. We want our children to be able to stand and challenge, even if it means the school, get harsh with them, like we saw with the head teacher. So no, I think that's the important thing. We're all against it, but we really need to be able to articulate it. We need to understand why, so that when it comes to this onslaught that we're seeing, we can defend it with our full might.
Yeah, I think that's the key point in regards to knowing how to challenge these erroneous ideas. And the example you gave there is a perfect one. What happened in the school, because if you think about it, there was a guy who was brought in, and what was he promoting? He wasn't there to just say, I'm homosexual and I'm a Muslim and it's my own choice, and it's been between me and my Lord, and he was there to actually play an active role in promoting to Muslim children that there's no problem with this. So it's not, and subhanAllah, alhamdulillah, one of the girls says this, look, if that's your choice, you do it, but you're here telling other people to get involved in this sin, right? But here what you're seeing is an active effort in people going into schools and promoting this. And that video that was leaked of this discussion, and then that teacher going off on one about 9/11 and stuff, right? Yeah, that was leaked because in that particular school the kids stood up and said, nah mate, this is bogus, this ain't happening. However, we don't know how many other schools this person and people like him have visited where you've not seen the video. Probably there hasn't been a pushback by the students.
Yeah.
Right, what are you saying?
And it's happening in a lot of schools. And you know what? Sometimes if you don't press your children on what's being spoken in school, you won't even know. So I even spoke to my daughter that mentioned the other day. Suddenly she started talking about, the sister who was killed in Iran for the hijab thing that we discussed a few weeks ago. So she said, oh yeah, we were discussing this, and they were asking us things like, is it okay to be forced to wear the hijab and stuff like that? So if you don't, she didn't actively even come to me and ask me about that. It just so happened that in conversation it came up. So sometimes we're not aware of it. And certainly if someone didn't record that, then we wouldn't have been aware of it either. And it also highlights that, and it wasn't the head teacher, by the way, it was just some other teacher who was saying it, the guy who was really aggressive. Again, if that wasn't
he not the head teacher?
He wasn't the head teacher.
Okay.
The head teacher has since come out and given a statement. And even that statement is bogus, and he's getting a lot of heat for it. But all I'm saying is that if that wasn't recorded, they can easily defend their position, isn't it? But everybody who watches it, even a non-Muslim who watches it, goes, actually, what was the need to bring up 9/11 and stuff like that? What you're trying to show is that you hate us, but you're tolerating us, rather than trying to detach terrorism from Islam. You're not helping. You're actually conflict. You're sticking the two things together, and you're telling the children that we're just tolerating you because you're here. We actually do think you're all terrorists. So this is the problem. So no, that is a good example. What I would also say is that, isn't it ironic that they say these that you're not allowed political signs and stuff in stadiums and stuff, but yet wearing this LGBT badge. I know I mentioned it earlier. What do you guys think? Because when it's Palestine and stuff, they're like, oh no, you can't, do political signs in sport. But the England team are not only putting the badge on, they've got, their transport and all sorts are linked to this liberal agenda as well.
It's one-sided, isn't it? So when it comes to... Go on, Afi, go on.
No, go on.
Well, I was going to say, just a quick point. When it comes to BLM, when it comes to they're thinking of taking the knee against Iran. By the way, England are playing Iran their first match. They're thinking of taking the knee to show their defiance against the Iranian regime. Apparently, I don't know whether they're going to do it. I've heard that when it comes to LGBT. So it's very double standards, isn't it? Again, like you said, when it comes to their messages and their political opinions, yes, it's all about you can do what you want. But when it comes to any other political messages that they don't want, nah, you can't do it. It's not, it needs to be detached.
Like you say, it's tolerance, for the sake of tolerance, as long as you tolerate their way of life, but they won't tolerate your way of life. What kind of bogus tolerance is that?
Exactly.
Sorry, Afi, you go.
No, I was just going to say, that does appear to be a contradiction, right, between what they say and what they do, and then how they enforce it, right? But but we need to understand their way of life, and there is no contradiction. Their whole way of life was built upon a contradiction, so that gives them a leeway to compromise on whatever they want and to implement whatever they want and how they see fit. Us as Muslims, we need to go back to basics here. Yeah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us clearly in the Quran that these people will never be happy with you until you leave your way of life. As in, us as Muslims, we leave our way of life and we accept theirs. So that shows us what the plane of the struggle is. This is what the international dynamic is, and this is what's creating the reaction of all the non-Muslim countries combined, all the agents in the Muslim world, and why us as an ummah, we are isolated, or we are under the spotlight of the West. You look at it in all aspects. You see it in you've seen in the World Cup, right? Why is there's such a spotlight on Qatar? And in reality, to be honest, Qatar hasn't even done anything to defend Islam. What, they just said, yeah, we're going to allow all you guys to come in, just don't show public shows of affection. You can still drink alcohol, drink it separately. Someone was praising the fact that they've got wudu facilities in stadiums. Man, they've got Muslims living there. Most of the tickets are going to go out to the local population. They've got wudu facilities in every building that you go to. This isn't anything special, right? And then you see that actually Qatar is going to come out, irrespective of what the West think, as a role model for Muslim countries, as a model that we should be praising. And that's the kind of praises that they're giving. God, Qatar's our role model Muslim country. Man, why? Right? So that's that element. You look at it then and think, okay, so in schools, right? Look at what happened in the school that you mentioned. They accept the people to be of whatever sexuality they want in this country. And you know what, even in Muslim countries, there are going to be people, even at the time of Muhammad, there probably were people who were that way inclined. But our rules are in relation to those public shows, as in the deed when it's done, right? And then there's punishment attached to it. Now, why in this society, when they are pushing for people who acceptance of that this people who are this way inclined exist, why are they bringing in a Muslim to talk about it from an Islamic perspective when that's got nothing to do with their values? Their values is just to accept it. So why are you bringing someone in who claims to be a Muslim to say, oh, in Islam, this is acceptable, even if it was an RE class? Why the hell are you why are you putting a spotlight on this topic when it's controversial, right? That Muslims won't accept it, and you're trying to force it down them.
Why is he even Muslim? Why didn't they bring a gay Jew or something, or a great gay Christian? You can tell there's an agenda there.
Why not just bring in a gay person and say, right, you know what, this is what I believe? Why is he there trying to promote that this is in some way accepted from Islam? So there is this battle between Islam and Kufr. And you know what, it's like from watching that video, when people have written off the future generations and you know what, our children, we're going to struggle to keep a Muslim, that gives you hope, and it makes you proud of them, the fact that they stood firm and they accepted it. And one of the criticisms that I've given a lot of people is that, as Muslims, well, forget that, throughout the world, right? And even on this topic of what's happening in Qatar and everything, and these sportsmen's coming out, they don't think, they can't even, they're not even intellectually enough to have this discussion on right and wrong on this issue. So they're just regurgitating what they've been spoon-fed, and it's got no basis to it. And Muslims in this country, we've fallen victim to it. But that girl that you're talking about in that video is the first time I've actually seen someone present it back in an intellectual manner. Exactly. Actually, you said this, and now you're contradicting yourself. All right, if you want to be like that, be like that. Why are you then coming in to tell us that this is acceptable when you know it's not? Or we're telling you it's not. Who are you to preach to us? So this is the first time I've seen really someone who's actually thinking about this subject matter and then presenting an argument back, which is a lesson for all of us. Anyone listening, for all of us as well, we need to make our children, give them that ability to think and make them thinkers, And that's the only way we're going to be able to protect them from this filth.
And the best thing about that video, what the bit I enjoyed the most, right, is the fact that the Muslims, the children, they kept their cool and they kept articulate,
mashallah.
intellectual. They didn't even lose their cool, and they could have lost their cool because it's disgusting, right?
And
you're
they're
shoving
kids.
it in. You know, you could have lost your cool. You lot were the ones that are really pushing in our face, so they didn't. Whereas who lost their cool? The teachers, the adults. They lost their cool. They got angry. They got aggressive. They started telling them to say. They started to shut up, and said they were tolerant. And I just love the contradiction between them claiming they're tolerant and shouting like that at kids and bringing up 9/11, whereas the kids, they're the ones that really kept their cool, articulated it really well, stayed calm. And yeah, I'd wish all our children to be like that, inshallah. And that's why, like you said, Afi, this just really highlights the importance of us educating our children so they can. And let's not feel like, oh, they're just kids or they don't have the capacity and, you know, just stay quiet. No, don't get angry, don't get harsh or don't get aggressive, but be articulate, be firm. That's something you can definitely do.
You know, even with my 4-year-old son now at the moment, right? It's like, you know, as he gets older, I don't want to be spoon feeding him things about Islam and all that. You know, you want to make them into thinkers so that there's only going to be one answer that satisfies their mind, and that is something that convinces them this is the truth. So, you know, you encourage your children even at an early age to ask why. Why is it this? I just so that they can understand, and they'll stop asking why when they get to a point. They say, yeah, even at that age, this satisfies my mind.
But you know, what's alhamdulillah amazing though is, can you see how when truth is hurled at falsehood really does perish? You know, that's a good example of it, where, like you said, they got agitated because they couldn't intellectually defeat some children, you know, Muslim children. On top of that, I feel another thing, you know, the point you made is a good point about, you know, sports people and stuff. They might not, you know, be tackling these things intellectually necessarily, but you know what I would say is, you know, in a lot of sports now, there are a lot of Muslims. So you're seeing like Muslims, you know, like with its MMA and stuff like that, a lot of people becoming Muslim. So what's happening is they promote their sports because that's kind of a big part of their way of life. They promote inclusion. So therefore, clearly Muslims are in sport. But what's happening is, and you see football players becoming Muslim as well now. So what's happening is you know, there's a mixture of the liberal and the Western way of life, and then Muslim sports people, be that like Pakistani players being in the English cricket team and stuff like that, and then them having to wait for them to move away before they celebrate with the alcohol and stuff like that. You know, those things are causing clashes within their way of life. And what naturally happens is you're getting like sports players who are non-Muslims starting to respect Islam and respect Muslims for how firm they are. Equally, that's not stopping them going, you know, we might disagree with Qatar and these countries. They're still all going and holidaying in those countries, be it Turkey, be it Qatar, be it Dubai and stuff like that. Why are it's the non-Muslims turning around and going, actually, we prefer to holiday in Dubai because we know our watch or whatever is not going to be stolen. We prefer to holiday in these countries. We like the sound of the adhan. Okay, I'm not saying they're going to suddenly all become Muslim, but can you see when that clash occurs, even within their own establishments, they can't compete. Islam always comes out on top, even though not politically it's not on top, but ideologically, in terms of clash of ideas, Islam always comes out on top. And the ones that fail are the ones that get agitated and go, oh no, you know, we're free to do whatever we want. Justify it. Justify the progress of your civilization via freedom. You know for a fact your freedoms are what are destroying your civilization, whether you like to admit to it or not.
You're right. And just to say, you know, this is why anyone who comes on TV or on a platform is going to be someone famous, and they're naturally going to be giving their view on it, right? And it doesn't make that view right, and it doesn't mean that this is the predominant view of the world. It's just their view, and they've just got a media by which to access millions of people or billions of people throughout the world, right? But the real discussion is there happening on the grassroots. And when you push them, like you say, when you push them, because you can't push someone who's talking, you know, to a Sky Sports camera, right, in a studio in London, right? But when someone who we're interacting with on a daily basis tries to push that conversation, you can actually destroy the fallacy of it. And this is why a lot of people do actually see that contradiction. And, and the ones who are vocal are those who perhaps represent the LGBT community, or those who, you know, can't live without drinking beer, and now they're thinking, right, what am I going to do out there? So they're in trouble. But, you know, there are a lot of people can start to see this fallacy, and that's why even today when I was reading on that picture that's doing the rounds with a pint glass saying, you know, this is for all a pint glass with the tea in it, and they were saying this is what all English fans are going to be drinking at the World Cup. Right. Okay. As a joke. And then a couple of people come out saying, oh, you should never go to Qatar, blah, blah, blah. How can you ban beer? Beer and football are synonymous together. And overwhelmingly, like, people were just attacking them, saying, like, you know, this is why you ruined the game, because, you know, all the violence and troubles that are associated with football are linked to alcohol. So therefore, actually, this is a good thing. But then, you know, the only reason I'm giving this example is on certain aspects, when people do start to think about it and start to form their own view, they can start to see the fallacy of situations like this. And the same thing applies to the attack on the LGBT stance, or whether, you know, someone is you know, married or not, and they're, you know, with another female in public, etc. You know, people can start to have, once a discussion is had, there is only one answer, like, you know, JK and Rash, you've been saying. And this is why, for us, in defense of Qatar, in defense of the children from the school, let's take that discussion back to, look, you've got your viewpoint, I've got my viewpoint, right? We're never gonna come in the middle on this thing, because our viewpoints are too completely different. So let's take it back. It's a bit like, you know, when we had that there's that coward on the previous podcast on YouTube making accusations, and the moment you take it down to that conversation, let's discuss our Akida against yours, and whichever one is true, whichever one could be proven to be true, I'll accept. They're no longer able to have that conversation. And that's where Muslims need to have the confidence. Our belief is correct. Why? Because it's from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We can prove it's from him. We can prove the Quran is his word, and we can prove that Muhammad is the messenger. Now the onus is on you to bring that level of proof to what you believe in, and then we'll accept what manifests or emanates from it. If you can't, you're not even worthy of this conversation.
100%. Yeah. And another way of looking at it, bro, Afi, you know, is that the clash is inevitable, because in the same way, you know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that, you know, he sent the messenger with the deen of truth, so that it prevails over all of the deens. So as Muslims, we know that, you know, it was the mission of the messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam to spread Islam to mankind, to liberate them from the darkness into the light, right? However, the other side, whether it's in the past, there might have been different people, different beliefs. Currently, it's, you know, the capitalists with liberalism and all this stuff. They're doing the same thing. So they're, you know, when they are invading Muslim lands, they are trying to take their ideas across. Whether they are doing things like, you know, what Rash mentioned before, where even, you know, having the World Cup there, and then the baggage that comes with it. This is their dawah. This is their dawah. The difference is that the Muslims in the old days, certainly when the Islamic State was spreading Islam, it was very upfront what the objective was. It wasn't hidden. Whilst with the non-Muslims now, they're not brave enough to openly say what it is they're trying to do. Right, but in reality, they are trying to do that. They're trying to spread their way of life. And the point that JK made, which was an important point, is the fact that right now in this current world order, you know, the values and the culture that they carry, they from their point of view, they are the universal. That's the universal culture for mankind. And actually, if you think about it, Islam, we believe, is the universal deen and the culture for mankind. So that clash is inevitable, whether it's in the classroom, whether it's on the battlefield, or whether it's in a stadium in Qatar. What's being played out is this struggle. And I think the point that JK makes and Afi and Rashu made as well, which is really important. I think, you know, if one point people take away from this podcast is the fact that we need to be prepared, and we need to make sure that those around us, whether it's our friends, families, kids, are also prepared, because the opposition in this game, in this struggle, they ain't taking any days off. They're at it constantly. So if you look at the attack on you know, the liberal attack, it's you know, at such a scale, whether it's Hollywood, whether it's Bollywood, even Lollywood, or whatever, whichever word it is, right? Whether it's media, whether it's football, sports, you know, you can't have politics in sports. You know, they can ban Russia, but then, you know, obviously the Israel hasn't qualified because they're probably not good enough. But the reality is, had they would have been able to play. But wait a minute, look at what they're doing in Palestine. So the important thing is us knowing our deen, us knowing the struggle, but also not using their standards, not using their arguments to try to defend our position. And that may mean, you know, it's like someone posted on, I think it was TikTok. You know, you might have seen this clip of Piers Morgan when he speaks to his reporter. And I know why what he says is all right. You know what I mean? Like, he basically deals with her. But there was actually, you know what? It was, you know, there's that organization. I think it might be only a media organization called British Muslims.
Yeah, British Muslims. Yeah.
Yes. This is they made they've got a channel on satellite as well and stuff like this, right? It was on their TikTok page, and they made that into a post, and it said Piers Morgan defends the Ummah, right? So I responded saying, how is Piers Morgan defending the Ummah here? Right? He's not. He's just defending his own point of view, right? Probably he's got some good links there. He makes money off them. I mean, like that FIFA guy was saying, you know, the Europeans, you know, they want to police the world morally, but the billions that they make off the Qatar, what about that? So I think the important point is really is preparing and knowing the plane of the struggle, whether it's in the World Cup, what we're going to hear, or whether it's in the classroom, the struggle is there. And it really depends whether we want to be part of this struggle or we just want to be in cruise control and just going through life as if nothing affects us. But the reality is there's no fence to sit on. You know, it's either haq or it's batil, or it's like George Bush Jr. said, you're either with us or against us. Whichever one it is, there's no fence to sit on. So, guys, inshallah, what I want to do is get your final thoughts really on the topics and kind of bring the podcast to a close. Rash, I'll start off with you, bro.
Jazakallah, bro. Yeah, no, I think just the main message which links the two things together. I know Afi's good at doing this normally, joining the topics. Be it the issues in the schools about the LGBT, be it what's happening for the World Cup. I think it just highlights that a greater battle at play. You know, what they're trying to show is like anti-religion. So the world that we live in today is based on secularism. They're pushing atheism. So they try to highlight that in a way as if, you know, it is like religion that caused so many problems in the past. So that's why they're against Muslims. That's why they have issue with Qatar. That's why those issues are happening in the school. But actually, if you look from, look at it properly, atheism is what is actually causing people to worship their whims and desires. You know, people going away from religion, put Islam aside a second, even people going away from Christianity and Judaism and other religions is the reason why their other things are becoming their gods. You know, even these sports are becoming their gods, because all of a sudden going to a football match and being able to drink is their life. All of a sudden you remove that from them and you're like taking their life away. But actually, look, wait there a minute. Can you not just go and enjoy some sport without alcohol? The irony is there was an interview and there was the non-Muslim woman said, oh, it probably is a good thing because like there'll be less violence. The non-Muslim said maybe there'll be less violence because there's no alcohol there. She was like, I don't agree with it, but
Rush, lost your audio, bro.
Yeah, I can't hear you.
I can't hear you. I'll go to JK inshallah whilst you get your audio back. Yeah, just remember the point you left off. JK.
Yeah, to be fair, I had a similar point. I think we do need to step back from this a little bit. The reality is they will use every opportunity they have to target Islam and promote their liberalism, and it's in every, like you said, it's threaded into it, nearly every single institution, whether that be the education, in our workplaces. There's a lot of promotion of this liberal agenda on the media, or on in terms of these events. It's everywhere, on movies. It's literally everywhere, and I think that's why we really need to understand the ideology that's being pushed here, and understand how we can defend ourselves and our children from this onslaught. Because to be honest, if this is how far it's got to in the last decade or so, it just scares me how far it will get in the next decade. And you know, all of us here sitting here obviously against it, and you know, because we're from a certain generation where we've have these values, and we didn't have the onslaught as much as the generations are having today. But there may come a day, may Allah protect us from this, where our own children come home and ask questions that make us uncomfortable, and that's why we need to obviously be proactive and educate them, and so this situation doesn't happen, and also protect the generations further down the line. So my message really is that we should be aware of this attack, this aggressive attack that's taking place. We should be able to educate our children, understand the ayat that come from this. It might be obvious that it's against Islam, but you know, the other day when I was just preparing for my khutbah, I went back to read about the story of Lut alayhi salam, and you know, there's some real strong messages there again that I know it's haram. Obviously, I know Allah forbid it, but you know, the fact that the people of Sodom, they invented this sin. Did you know that they actually the first people to bring the sin into reality and into the world, and Allah says that in the Quran. They invented this, and that is why they incurred the wrath of Allah, because they invented this sin, and it's the most evil of, you know, it's such an evil and kind of disgusting sin that Allah had to send a messenger to them to guide them, and many of them were not guided, and they were still. And the other thing is, they were proud of this sin. They didn't do it in secret, and there's so many, like what's it called? So many comparisons we can make to the Western liberalism we see today, where they are proud of doing this. They call it pride. You know, there's on their foreheads really. They have done worse than this. So they've invented further crimes against Allah. So imagine the wrath of Allah against these people, right, on the Day of Judgment. So we cannot become a people that start to accept this. And you know, there's some Muslim organizations that have become a little bit lax, right, when it comes to this, and started to share platforms and say these people are also minorities, and we need to, you know, I don't need to repeat who the organizations are. We all know who they are. We cannot become lax when it comes to this, because the day we give an inch, you know, they'll take a mile. So we have to stand firm. We have to go back to the evidences, the dalil. It's clear cut from Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And as long as we do that, as long as we refer back to the Quran and the Sunnah, we will be safe and secure, and our children will be safe. So I think for me, that's the message. Don't sit on our laurels. Don't get complacent, because this attack is going on in every level of society. Our children are seeing this as well when they go to school. So really face up to the conversation, speak to your children about it, speak to your families about it, because there is a cancer. And if we're not careful, that cancer will enter our households. So that's really my message.
Yeah, Jazakallah for that. Rush, I mean, I don't know if you want to add anything to, I don't know if JK mentioned, but, or even if you can hear you. I don't know if you want to just...
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. You want to finish your point off, or did JK cover it?
He covered it pretty much. All I will say, just to conclude my bit, was just that it's clear that even atheism, secularism, these are things that are trying to push a certain worldview, which is what JK is mentioning, the liberal world order now. So yeah, no, to be fair, JK covered it. I just think we need to be on the front foot with those things, and all of these particular examples that occur, be it the World Cup, be it the school thingy, they're actually opportunities for us to engage with Muslims to discuss these issues. Because sometimes just going to someone and go, oh, by the way, this issue, let's talk about it, doesn't have the same effect as when it's directly a trending topic or something that's affecting your children there and then. So it's important to tackle these issues when they're hot.
Okay, no, Jazakallah khair for that. Afi, is there anything you want to add, bro?
Yeah, no, just as JK and Rash were talking, it just highlighted that there's another link between these two topics, which is if you look at the non-Muslims, right? They know that, and I'm talking about the think tanks, the political leaders. They know Islam is the truth. At the very least, they know they can't intellectually refute this way of life, right? And that puts them in a dilemma. They can't be seen as accepting of Muslims and Islam when it completely refutes their way of life. And at the same time, they can't be seen to be outwardly, blatantly attacking Islam as well, right? So they're in this dilemma. And you can see this in both those examples, like the teacher, the coward of a teacher who was abusing the children, who, I would challenge to come and have a discussion with, the likes of us if he's that confident in his belief, right? You hear what he was saying. He was saying to these children that, look, we didn't blame you for 9/11 or whatever it was, right? We are tolerant of you. So what we want from you is a little bit of tolerance back to what we believe. Don't attack us, just leave it, just accept it. And, the same thing in Qatar, we'll give you the World Cup, but you're going to have to give us something in return. Right? And this reminds you, and this is no different from the time of Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, when the non-Muslims came to Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and said, look, we'll live under Islam for a year, but you got to live under our way of life for a year, and we'll see whichever one's best. And Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam just could not accept that, because Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala would not allow him, and he does not allow us to accept that compromise. And he tells us in the Quran that they want you to compromise with them just so that they could compromise with you. And this is all the trap that we as Muslims need to be aware of. Like, it might be seen as, oh, yeah, look, they're giving us an inch here, let's give them an inch back. On the matter of belief, we can't even give a millimeter, yet alone an inch on this issue. Our belief is the truth, is correct, we can prove it, and our way of life is far, far, far. It's not even a comparison with their way of life. They're just so inferior, it's not even worth comparing it. And we need to be the defenders of the belief.
No, Jazakallah khair, brothers. Some top points and some sound advice where, I really encourage everyone to really think about this. And also in regards to the World Cup that's going to kick off tomorrow, as Muslims, we've seen many things on the internet about, Qatar, Muslims, alcohol and stuff like that. But what we really have to understand is that these conversations probably wouldn't have happened in this way if Qatar had not put themselves forward for the World Cup. So that's what we need to think about as well. Is this culture something that we want in our lands in this way? And okay, Qatar might start off the ceremony with the Quran. Obviously, whenever you hear the Quran, this is a blessing, but we can't excuse them for the other things. I mean, whether it's through the alcohol and stuff, but actually, you know what, in the grand scheme of things, the fact that they've got American bases on their land, the fact that they are part of this satanic coalition against Islam and the revival of Islam, this is far, far greater than them just allowing alcohol in their lands. And just want to end on a point that Rash made, is the important point that one way that this Qatar 2022 World Cup can be used is, if this is if it's a success, then they will show that Qatar is a model nation for the Muslim lands, for the Arab lands in particular, because they brought all this stuff in and it went all smoothly. if it doesn't happen in that way, just say it's a failure because of things kick off and all that. Again, this works in their favor, because what they're going to say is, look, we gave you the opportunity. However, the reality is you got to make some changes. If you want these kind of opportunities in the Muslim lands again, then look at what happened in Qatar 2022 and learn from it. So in both ways, like they say, it's a double-edged sword, and Muslims need to know this. So guys, inshallah, jazakallah khair for all your thoughts. It's a pleasure to have you guys on. And I'm not really going to take much longer by asking which team you're going to be supporting. We can discuss that at another point. But, for everyone listening at home, I hope that this podcast was beneficial for you. And if it was, please share it with your family and friends. And once again, a big jazakallah khair for my panel. And inshallah, on that note, I will see you guys on the next one. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.